So think about this for a second. Can a single 3-minute song actually be a declaration of war? Can it spark a movement? Well, we're about to dive into the story of a song that did exactly that. It became this haunting anthem that really challenged the conscience of an entire nation. All right, picture this. It's 1939, you're at Cafe Society in New York City. The room's buzzing, filled with jazz and conversation. A singer steps up to the microphone and opens with these words, so calm, almost gentle. But what came next was, well, it was anything but pastoral. The people in that room were about to hear something that would change them, and music forever. To really get the raw power of this song, we first have to understand how it was presented, because this wasn't just another tune in the lineup. No, this was a carefully planned, almost sacred ritual, and it was designed to force an audience to listen. Now, this is what's so incredible. The club owner, Barney Josephson, had these super strict rules. First off, Strange Fruit was always the last song of the night. No encores, no exceptions. Then, all service just stopped. Bartenders stopped pouring, waiters froze. The entire room was plunged into complete darkness, except for one single, piercing spotlight right on singer Billie Holiday's face. And then, when that final devastating note hung in the air, poof, the light went out and she was gone. Just gone, leaving everyone in this heavy, uncomfortable silence. So that brings us to the big question, right? What on earth was in this song that needed a performance this dramatic, this confrontational? Why would you go to all this trouble to basically trap your audience with a piece of music? Well, the answer, and this is the wild part, it doesn't start with a musician. It starts with a school teacher. And it doesn't start with a melody, but with a photograph. A truly horrific photograph that he just could not get out of his head. The event that kicked all of this off happened on this day in this town. A white mob dragged two black teenagers, Thomas Shipp and Abram Smith, out of their jail cells. They beat them and then they lynched them from a tree right in the town square. A local photographer was there and captured the whole horrifying scene. And this is where two totally different worlds collide. On one side, you have Abel Meeropol. He's a school teacher in the Bronx, an activist, the son of Russian immigrants. He sees that photograph of the lynching and is so shaken, so haunted by it, that he sits down and writes a poem. And on the other side, you have the one and only Billie Holiday, the legendary jazz singer who would give that poem its unforgettable, soul-shattering voice. Meeropol, who wrote under the name Lewis Allen, he didn't hold back. He took the gruesome details from that photograph and put them directly into his poem, which he called Bitter Fruit. I mean, you can see the direct line here. The hanging bodies became black bodies swinging. The smiling, almost celebratory crowd, that became the deeply sarcastic line about a pastoral scene. The sheer physical horror of it all, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. Nothing was metaphorical here. It was raw, journalistic, and impossible to ignore. But for Billie Holiday, man, this was so much more than just a political statement. This was deeply, deeply personal. See, just 2 years before, her own father had died because he was turned away from multiple whites-only hospitals while he was suffering from pneumonia. She called his death a slow-motion lynching. So for her, singing this song wasn't just a performance. It became her own personal and very public way of mourning. Okay, so performing the song live was one thing, a brave thing. But trying to get this raw political protest onto a record, that was a whole different war. A fight against the fear of the entire music industry. At the time, Holiday was signed to Columbia Records, one of the biggest labels out there. But they were like, no way. Absolutely not. They were terrified of the backlash. They worried that Southern record stores and radio stations would just boycott everything they produced. Even Holiday's own legendary producer, John Hammond, turned it down, calling the song too artsy. But Billie did not give up. And she found this guy, Milt Gabler, who ran a small, independent label called Commodore. She sang the song for him right there in his shop, a cappella, and he was just moved to tears. Gabler got it. He knew this was more than a song. It was a piece of history. So he actually got Columbia to agree to let Holiday out of her contract for one single session. And what they created in that studio session was just a masterpiece of tension and horror. The key, B-flat minor, it just feels like a funeral march. The tempo is agonizingly slow, like a dirge, which forces you to hang on every single painful word. But the real stroke of genius, Holiday doesn't even sing for the first 70 seconds. That long, ominous instrumental intro, it's all about building this unbearable sense of dread before she even opens her mouth.
The song became a hit, a real sensation. But with that success came a target on Billie Holiday's back, and a powerful, dangerous new character enters our story, the United States government itself. They saw this singer and her song as a threat that had to be neutralized.
And this is where we meet the main villain of our story, Harry J. Anslinger. He was the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Anslinger was a known, virulent racist who literally used the war on drugs as a weapon to target minorities, especially black jazz musicians. So when he heard Strange Fruit and Holiday flat out refused his demand to stop singing it, he decided he was going to destroy her. Anslinger launched this relentless, years-long campaign to silence her for good. He knew about her struggles with addiction, so his agents framed her for drug possession in 1947, and she was sent to prison. When she got out, he had her cabaret card revoked. Now, that meant she was banned from performing anywhere in New York City that served alcohol, which basically killed her career there. And this persecution, it followed her literally to her deathbed. In 1959, while she was dying in a hospital, his agents arrested her. On July 17, 1959, Billie Holiday died. She was handcuffed to a hospital bed. Government agents had forbidden the doctors from giving her the medical treatment that could have stabilized her. She was only 44 years old. So the government may have succeeded in ending Billie Holiday's life, but they failed completely to silence her song. In all the decades since her death, the legacy of Strange Fruit has just grown and grown, transforming from this controversial protest anthem into a sacred piece of American history. And its ultimate triumph, its ultimate vindication, came in 1999, right at the end of the century it helped define. Time magazine gave it the highest honor possible, naming it the Song of the Century. They recognized it as the single most important musical statement of the 1900s.
And its influence is, it's just everywhere. It's in the Grammy Hall of Fame. It's preserved in the Library of Congress as a national treasure. It was reinterpreted with this ferocious power by Nina Simone. Its melody was even sampled by Kanye West, bringing this whole story to a brand new generation. This is a song that just refuses to be forgotten.
You know, maybe no one captured the point of the song better than Nina Simone. She called it the ugliest song I have ever heard. And she meant that as the highest possible compliment. See, it was never supposed to be beautiful. It was never meant to be comforting. It was meant to be violent. It was meant to tear at your guts and force you to look at a horrifying, ugly truth. Which leaves us right here with this really powerful, unsettling thought. The song's final line is, "Here is a strange and bitter crop." Now back then, Billie Holiday and Abel Meeropol were talking about the lynchings of their time. So the question the song still forces us to ask, all these years later, is this: what does that strange and bitter crop look like today?